Well, no, well, uh, actually, was Mr. Back. I am. Well, this today we've got Bing, Bing Berber, and she's been philosophizing on learning in for some time. So really fascinating learning that happens in science. So uh, um, on parenting through double lenses and parents as activating is involved with lots of thinking and balance.
Interesting. Like the first title didn't show up, but I don't know. Yeah, it clicked. It does. Yeah, it works. It's just the title page that didn't show up as expected.
Have you tried the arrow keys as well?
It's just open office.
Yeah,
There is
that is a possibility. So my suggestion quickly on the make it a PDF.
But it shows that the
I
main
do, I do have PowerPoint Viewer, which is Microsoft.
So that's another option.
Yeah. We're looking from that way.
I'm just wondering if you want to take that or whatever it's called, that screen down, because I think it would look better.
I think there are too many marks on the
wall is
wall.
not pure.
You just say because the slide is actually larger than the.
Well, then I can adjust that.
Yeah. What is sorry? What's your PowerPoint called?
It's on the desktop. If you do the date modified, it's just.
So you made it in Open Office?
Yeah, because when I turn it, yeah, but I can bring the actual PowerPoint file back. It's on my USB. If that works better.
Because I've got Open Office on this.
Yeah. USB has the file.
I'm thinking this should be.
It's just the first slide. So you see all the rest showing. Yeah, I was just posting it again.
Okay.
I can just do it like this. Now just click to change the size.
Let me adjust the projector.
Yeah, that's clear. Just like a
I'm afraid I've had the slides and the projector I've had to put together on very limited budget. So apologies about the technology. I think mostly the slides are will be guiding ourselves as presenters.
Yeah, so is it already recorded?
Yes, but I'm going to edit it all.
So, yeah, I think maybe just introduce how this little talk. In December 2023, we did a podcast. So the family did a podcast with Alex, really just talking about how we normally work with our daughter at home, and in terms of supporting her development, and also constantly reflecting on how we can be better parents. So it's a quite interesting learning journey, and Alex was fascinated by that. That's why we had the podcast lasted over 2 hours, and it certainly wasn't a conventional formal way of conducting the discourse, but a lot of interesting things actually came out of that. And that was when our daughter was preparing for her university entry. So actually, the following August, she got admitted to read philosophy at University of Edinburgh in 2024. And also, part of the promise is I want to write a piece of reflection on this. So I use that as a time to record the child's milestone achievement, but at the same time, it's also to further reflect on what parenting or what our parenting style has led her this way, and then what worked, what didn't work. And that piece is hosted at Reading University along with the video. And since then, we had several conversations between Alex and myself, really just talking about this broader topic of human development. And as a parent, but at the same time, also an academic working in higher education, I more and more realized the importance of children development much earlier, even before the schooling period. And that naturally led us to consider the importance or the role of parents in the whole children development, i.e. human development. So this is the sort of rationale how I came to develop this talk, also quite fulfilling the overall theme of this 18 months series of workshop on human development. So the 5 areas that I just want to really capture my thought is looking at what are the common responsibilities perceived by parents these days, not just in the Western society, but also in the Eastern society. And we can see the contrast, some differences, but also some similarities in consideration. And then looking to further to really consider the importance of parents to children development. And then this is incorporated with some of the actual experience we had. So you can see as self-evident. And then also the observation of people around us. And then I wanted to go on looking at what are really the relationship between parenting and human development as such a bigger topic. And then on that knowledge, we'd like to revisit what is the parents' responsibilities. And I also want to really consider from the philosophical perspective on education. I found, again, reassured by the Confucius school of thinking on education developed thousands of years ago. So to begin with, a very simple illustration of perceived parents' responsibility. I think the better way to capture that is really bring Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if we're looking at now, through talking and through seeing how, or observing whenever we are out, seeing how parents, especially parents of young children, how they talk to their children and then the way they pay more attention to them, It's very much looking after the lower level of hierarchy of needs, according to Maslow's theory. It's the physiological needs, the food, shelter, and clothing to make sure children are protected and grow up without the fear, which is very much the animal instinct. This is probably prevalent among all the animal kingdom. And then that brings in to make sure children feel safe and protected and cared for. And then to add the layer of that needs is making children feel they are loved, protected, and cared. And then they have this sense of belonging as the family belonging. So those are the very common practices we can observe among parents across the world. That is the basic thing they will fulfill as carer duty. So parents as carers. And this caring duty can be fulfilled by more than biological parents. And anybody who has that sense of commitment and duty, willing to take on the long-term responsibility of a child care. So the very typical example is the step parents or the foster parents, or even the family member like the aunties, uncles, or grandparents who are taking up this kind of carer duty in the absence of the actual parents. So from that perspective, we can see that that is one part of the parent responsibilities implemented over centuries. But really the question I have is that enough as parents to do? Because if we're looking at caring duty to be the dominant part of parents, then there will be a time or an age when children grow to become an independent adult. They might feel that caring duty obsolete or unnecessary, or to some extent strangling their independence. And then as a result, we often see young adults at the turning of age of 18 or even 16 in Scotland, looking at the legal age, they rather go out, moving to a council property than living together with the parents for various reasons. And that actually it's not uncommon in Western society, but in the East, in the Eastern society, for example, in China, it is not so much the case. Younger adults, children still are welcomed or accepted by their elder parents to be in the house. And with the current geopolitical dynamic leading to the economic downturn in China, this situation become very popular because quite often the younger adult children are no longer able to find jobs or cannot sustain their income. And they had to rely on their elder parents' pension or savings to sustain until they can get back on their own feet. So it's quite often you will see a lot of Chinese youth, they will still live with their parents because they do not have the financial independence. So however the situation, it does contribute to the point that this is the extended caring responsibilities of parents that are doing. Caring as in fulfilling the lower bottom of hierarchy of needs. So when we're looking at the other part of duty, which is actually assumed but unbalanced, implemented among parents, is the role of parents in child development. This is where how parents can really play that role linking towards the human development. And that is the part that probably helping to fulfill the top two, the top level of hierarchy of needs is the self-esteem, the development of self-esteem, and then also the self-actualization. So we're looking at from the role of parents in child development. We're probably looking at, again, through providing the safety net or creating a safe environment for children to grow up and to be cared for, that actually bring that sense of stability. And with the detail, with the level of engagement in children's learning, even playing, which in many child psychology, we can see the encouragement or the promotion of parents get involved in children's learning and play. And then providing materials like reading books or audiobooks or even, quite interesting cartoons and movies to entertain children, expose them to the variety of information they can receive with the help of, with the aim of developing them. So from the cognitive neurologist perspective, we're looking at this, it's a form of cognitive stimulation. Because as humans, our brain can develop only by external stimuli. Without this stimulation, it is difficult for brain to really function. So, a key substance to enable our brain to be active continuously is the curiosity. So brain is fed on curiosity. And children at early age were probably the most curious creatures. When they were young, they're interested in a lot of things and they want to satisfy that exploration and curiosity. So through that, the cognitive stimulation will directly contribute to their brain development. And this does create a physical change of their brain development, and that leading to the long-term effects on their ability of learning, understanding, and acquiring new information when their brain matures. And then the other big role in child development is how they can facilitate. It's the way they facilitate. And actually studies in the cognitive science has proved that either the negligence, as in parents or carers only provide learning materials and then just leave them with the children, expect the children to engage in those learning materials, or the extreme that they interfere every step of children's activity. Both ends of that spectrum will not create the genuine brain development or stimulate the brain development, because that will always take away some of the learning abilities of children. So being ignored by the parents, only leaving the books or the learning materials alone with the child will not give them the chance to really learn, because after all, they are children. They don't really know that well. They need facilitation. They need, constant attention and scaffolding learning. So they need to be exposed to what is going on step by step demonstration. Well, with overly interfering, which is the end of the extreme that parents tend not to pay too much attention, believing I give you books, that is enough, you're on your own, tend to be a more Western style family parenting. Well, the other extreme is that they're overly controlling how children learn, tend to be the more Eastern style, like Chinese style. So we have seen China being the one typical country, but some other part of South Asian countries like South Korea, they also equally have parents who are overly interfering with children's study, from as simple as what additional tuition classes you have to do, to which university and what subject you have to do. So the parents will take that decision rather than the children make that decision. So either way will not create this effective cognitive stimulating environment to develop the children's brain. And this is where, when we're looking at the child's development, we are always projecting the early experience of children engaging at home with their parents will always lead to, in their later stage as an adult, how they interact with others, how they present themselves in the society, and how they perceive themselves, whether confidently or very reserved and showing a sign of weakness. And then when we're looking at who are these children when they grow up, they are humans. And also we can be bold to say they are the future of any country. We rely on them to create economic contributions. We rely on them to sustain the heritage of the society and the community and the culture. And we even rely on them to advance our society. And when children were not exposed to a healthy physical and psychological learning and growing development, they will always have certain repercussions when they grow up, from the unstable mental health status. I think this is evident by the increased number of youth in the UK who are suffering from some sort of mental disorder, and that statistics has been consistently high, looking at the NHS statistics collected over the past few years. And then to the point of that young adults taking as an example of the university students or college students, they actually independent, probably financially or lifestyle, they often live on their own or live with their mates, away from the family. And that seems to be quite independent life. However, when it comes to challenges they have to face, solving certain problems, even problems that caused by themselves, they become very vulnerable. And because the early sort of development didn't really teach them how to be assertive, how to solve problems, or how to deal with difficulties. And that in turn gives them no practice throughout the growing up, and then coming to the stage they have to deal with that, making decisions from as simple as the relationship decisions to as important as employment decisions. They become weak in what to do. And in turn, they actually turn to others. So they become dependent. Well, they thought they are independent, they are dependent on the external, other than their family, to seek support, either from the government, from other authorities, or from the friends, and expecting others will solve that problems. So we actually see a growing number of dependent university graduates. When they are let out in the workplace, many of them will not have a more realistic understanding of how the society operates and what workplace is really like. And then they quite often find it easier to blame the managers of the companies when they don't get the sort of expected situation as in their head, rather than what is really going on. And then at the same time, we also see the downside of our current education in the UK as one example, but in many other countries as well. We are creating a racing to the bottom phenomenon. We have university graduates who work in supermarkets on the cashier, or the McDonald's, or or in restaurants, in hospitality, doing the jobs that only require probably a high school graduate certificate. And this does causing more and more the sort of, response from the industry. Either the salary will not raise to matching that university degree level, rather is they are looking at what this job really needs, rather than what are the supplies of the labor have. So those are the sort of extended discussion on looking at the role of parents in child development at an individual basis, and then collectively, how can that really lead to the societal effect. So if we're looking at the more effective parenting, so if it's a good parenting, what becomes a good or effective parenting? One of the things we often do not think too much is we have many identities or jobs that require certificate, degree level of education, certain level of experience, even internships or placement. But we never have any formal training in becoming parent. Parents are seem to be a very naturally assumed role. So as long as you are an adult, you possess the ability to reproduce physically, biologically, you can be a parent. So from that perspective, yes, the biological needs can be achieved through becoming a parent, but the humanistic role of parent is probably not well recognized. So we have seen a lot of, throughout the society, in the history, we have seen a lot of single mothers, young mothers, and, giving birth to children without much planning or much thought. And on this part, I have to say, for many Eastern countries, we do take child caring and child education more seriously. And that is why we have the other extreme, as in people would get rid of a seemingly not so healthy fetus in order to produce a good baby, in order to produce a good child for the family. And also the marital age, the legal marital age in China, it used to be 20 years old. So that means for women, you can only legally give birth when you reach the age of 20 or 21. And it actually has that sort of restriction. And part of the debate or rationale is that is when the adult, is more developed as a younger person, and then you are probably at the primal physical status as a mother, and then you can bear a child that is genetically healthy and biologically healthy to bring up the baby. So that is why we have had that situation that a lot of families, they rather go to the abortion to get rid of the fetus when at the initial stage they find it's probably not very healthy. There will be potential medical problems than giving birth to that baby without much of the thought. So this is actually, again, it's a quite extreme spectrum of this perception, like who should be parents and how to be parents. But when we're looking at if a good parenting activity is implemented and exercised, who will benefit from it? I think children will no doubt will be the direct beneficiary of growing up in a very stable, psychologically secured environment, and then facilitated by learning resources and also the participation of parents and exposure to a lot of external stimuli, like different experience, traveling abroad, trying out different sports, going to all kinds of exhibitions or, cinemas or theaters and so on. But parents equally can benefit from that from the personal development perspective. So I think this example can be, I can self-evidence that. So ever since my husband and I, we decided to pay more attention to bringing up Alex, our child is also called Alex. So bringing up her when she grows up. So we recognize at different age group, different stage of her growing up, there will be a different needs. So we constantly adjust how we talk to her, and now we pay more attention to observe the change in her, however trivial it is. And then at the same time, we will start trying out a different way of conversation. And the very important thing is we want to make sure that we can encourage an open communication. So we will respect her, and we always respect her as who she is, not seen as a authoritarian figure that because we are the parents, we tell her to do what we ask her to do without any reason. So there's always the mutual respect involved in that conversation. And through this sort of discussion on how to work with her, support her, we also grow to realize the importance of being parents. And then since we both work in the higher education, we also realize how many of these self-learning and development can be applied to supporting our students, and then also having a conversation in a wider range. So that naturally is another form of human development, is the adult development or the lifelong development. And then when children collectively from different individual families grow up towards this quite appropriate level of readiness to be the adult who can take on responsibilities, who are ready to face challenges, and who are able to solve complex problems, and then also not feeling resent or feeling withdrawn whenever there is a turbulent time, then the person nevertheless will become quite an important contributor to their society and community. So when we have more and more children who can come from that kind of secured family environment, supported and genuinely cared by their carers and parents, they will then develop the same attributes who will be more compassionate and empathetic towards others. So that is where the collective effect will reach out to the community and society, and from all levels of aspects, contribution from economic, overall social resilience, or even to the genuine equality and diversity and inclusion. So they are able to include and understand the differences of people. So this is when, in preparing for this slides and the talk, I just reminded myself of a very common, a very popular early child's textbook developed to embody the Confucianism idea of education. And this three-character classic was actually turning to like a children rhyme. So young children can easily remember and memorize those words, and then parents will be responsible for explaining what they mean. And it started in the Song Dynasty in the 13th century in China, but it wasn't written. Well, the original idea actually from Confucius, which is thousands of years ago. And among many of the educating principles, this one I thought is quite accurately capture the situation we are facing among parents. So, well, a lot of parents thought I give the food and the clothes and the home to my children. That is my job done. And then as soon as they turn 18, they are old enough, they can make their own money to cover their own food, clothing, and shelter. And for the education, it's the teachers or the school's responsibility. Parents don't have to do that. And actually, Confucius, in the thousands of years ago, already claimed the importance of parents. And that is why this came out as raising children without educating them is the parents' fault. And actually, the original text means father's fault. So this is not to promote misogynistic view or masculinist view. Father figure is actually important in every child's development. Even the later research in the Western society has confirmed when a child grows up in a family in the absence of a fathering figure or a male figure, they will likely experience a lot of psychological disturbance and making decisions that are not very appropriate coming to their later age. So that actually just reflects the philosophy that has been developed thousands of years. And then moving to the education is teaching without rigor is teacher's negligence. So that reflects the principle of teaching or education in the Western society. Well, taking UK as an example is teachers either are reluctant, willingly or unwillingly to have a relaxed assessment criteria. And the example we have witnessed in university is Asian universities would have less and less reading lists for students to do in any social science subject. And then the assessment will become less rigorous in marking them. So they are, the key point is driven by the national student survey results, because that is a very, like a trademark of the university to say we are good university supporting students. They are, in a way, buying students' vote by giving them marks that they don't really necessarily deserve if we rigorously assess them according to the academic criteria. And I myself, well, I am one of them who is forced to conform to this phenomenon. If I were to recall the way how I mark my students at university, I probably would say I would fail at least a third of them that I have marked. But unfortunately, whenever there is a fail, actually it becomes more difficult to fail a student than passing it. Because failing a student, we have to justify extra, which in my view, as a higher education academic, is wrong. I think I would say that word. It's wrong to having to mark a student not by their academic performance, but by the considerations of anything but academic. So this is actually the class that captures both the importance of parents and the educators in the whole education system. So one of the other things also in terms of supporting the importance of individual level of self-esteem and self-actualization according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're also looking at from a human development perspective in a generic term. We often say humans are each of us is a unique individual, a unique being. And this uniqueness is not just informed by the nature of us as humans, because at the beginning of our life, we're all probably the same. Infants, male or female, I require equal type of energy to survive. But what makes us different is the habit of living and then also the environment we were exposed to. That makes us different from each other. And also in turn, that creates a different social semantic box. We group with people who are similar to us, think alike, act alike, having the same value, and now we're naturally distanced from those who are very different from us. This is the same across the world. Actually, we can easily see how we make friends, who we make friends, what are our criteria when we choose a suitor to entering a marital relationship or trying to have a co-worker or business. So actually, this again reflected in that three character classic. It's just to show how human development is, the theme of human development really got across the whole Confucius school of education philosophy. And I think the Eastern philosophy certainly has a lot of applicability to the Western philosophy and then echoes the Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates' principle of education as well to a large extent. So this is really just where I want to highlight the importance of parents in the whole task of human development. So I think in the end, what I really hope is, I feel it is the time for another enlightenment of human development. There's been a long delay since the recent one in the 19th century. And while in China is even longer, since the 100 schools of philosophy during the Confucius period, so that is about 200 BC, we have really not had any enlightenment. And sadly, the three character classic was discontinued, forced to be discontinued during the Cultural Revolution in the mainland China. While in Taiwan, many of the families or scholarly-based families, they still carry on using this as a very early stage of education textbook for the children, not only at home, but also in their primary school. So this is something that maybe it is the time we need to learn from the history, learn from our past achievement on human development, and then re-enter the modern sphere of our society. And this is probably the time we particularly need to look at the importance of humanity in the era of AI prevalence. So yeah, I think that is pretty much what I like to share. And yes, as I mentioned before with the recording, I can say I'm committing myself to edit the three-character classic translating version. So once that is ready, I will have that published on the Ragged University for any parents to reference if they're willing to do that. So that is all about my presentation.
Fascinating. Are you up for a few questions?
Absolutely.
So what I know straight off, but I'm kind of curious what these principles that we associate with familial situations, these relationships of nurture, and I've read about how government and institutions are increasingly framing themselves as corporate parents. And I certainly know intuitively the importance of these nurturing relationships. So for people who lack those relationships with their biological parents, how do you see people in the society being able to tap into those aspects of education and nurture and human development?
Yeah. Well, I think before I go into sharing some of my initial suggestions, there's one thing I want to acknowledge. Not everybody will intrinsically accept what I'm sharing. And when people generally do not accept their responsibility either for themselves or for their children, it becomes difficult, if not impossible, to really embrace that education and embrace their effort to support the children development or support themselves. So once that level of, so I would call it is the mindset that requires change. The knowledge and the skills can be easily acquired externally, either through, this body of corporate parents or the educational institute. The resources, we're never short of resources, thanks to the social media, thanks to the internet, the prevalence of that online communication. But what we need is people who genuinely accept what they need to do. And this is the same as anybody who embark on a learning. If they do not genuinely interested in something, it becomes difficult to learn with a good achievement. And we can experience that ourselves. When we were forced to take a course that we don't like, only because we have to pass that to fulfill the institutional requirement, we will do it badly, maybe pass, but not enjoying it. But when we learn something we genuinely enjoy, you don't even need the teachers to teach you. You probably will teach yourself, grabbing all kinds of resources you can have, and then just getting with that information, and then, through the critical reflection and also the sort of self-learning. So this is where, for people who want to have access or really benefit from this wide range of resources in other organizations or through other platforms and external source, the very first thing they need to do is the self-exploration and self-realization. To form their self-identity as a learner, more important, lifelong learner, and acknowledge learning does not stop at the schooling level or university level. Learning is a continuous thing. And this particularly is helpful and important since many of the countries in the world have entered aging society. We have longer life expectancy. We have a lot of time, more time than before, to learn new things and to entertain ourselves. So that is why if individuals can start really have that deeper level of self-discovery and transform their mindset, they can learn at any level. They can learn pretty much everything, I believe. It's the self-driven and intrinsic activity. And so, yes, that is the question really is, how do they benefit? Is they need to adjust themselves to be ready for this mass learning resources they can access. It's the beauty of that data dissemination, which in the ancient times, our ancestors would never have that opportunity. So from this perspective, it is the equality of learning, but that can only be achieved. The outcome can only be achieved if learners taking full responsibility and full control of their own action.
Do you think people are less motivated, self-motivated?
I feel the self-motivation is quite evident, at least among the circle I'm in. This is not only just for university students who do not see learning as an intrinsic thing, rather as an instrumental thing, degree obtaining. But equally, I observe many colleagues who have been in the industry for too long and forgot to update the information. So I think like the examples we often refer is we have seen colleagues who would use 20 years old teaching slides to teach international business. which 20 years, a lot of things have changed, and that slice never did. And that is a very strong evidence to show that this self-motivated learning is not very prevalent, or at least not as prevalent as it should be, to really enable a genuine human development movement at the society level. And probably evidence to show how many people interested in this topic are coming to the talk today. That is another, yeah. It's a free event, and yet they are not, willing to commit the time to come to listen to something. So it's very much a demonstration of what is going on. And then actually on that note, what I'd like to also mention is, it is the time the society need to rethink what education is really about. And university degree is no longer the only way out for young people. This society needs to sustain for people doing all kinds of work, craftsmen, professionals, and those many jobs can be easily sufficed by a college level or a certificate, or even just expertise license training. So in that sense, the higher education in the UK probably needs a rethinking. General study is probably not suitable anymore to really support a diverse society. And rather, we need to have that differentiation in the education. This is not to say, not the least to say, we are treating people differently. Well, in a way, we are treating people differently because we are all different. I can't possibly use the same way as other families, approach to educate their children on my own daughter. And equally, I'm not imposing how we bring up Alex should be adapted or adopted by other families, because every family should find their own unique way to work with that unique individual. And that is why, yes, we have to treat people differently, but not with any sense of disrespect. Rather, it is enhancing the respect of individuals. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Anybody else got some questions? Quite fond just any questions from the work? So cynical parents' picture now is things so that they just don't want to learn anything. So bang. It's more. It's going to look it's going to look more that way. It's going to look more like there's that problem than the status quo, because status quo kind of creates that problem for itself, the fear of dying and just prove that things go wrong, and the fear of failing. Not doing very wrong. So, how do you bring them to see this exactly without that moral keenness and interest, and therefore momentum to run?
So let me I just want to check my understanding of the question. So you're saying, like, you acknowledge the some of the issues I just picked about parents or family failing to learn, failing to provide the security to to the children. That how can we do something?
And that's failing out learning, failing into learning outcomes by the child. So fail by their own fault, judge.
Yeah. So how can what can we do to really prevent this?
Well, to bring the parents or parents that's exactly that will happen less if there isn't that just full assumption.
Yeah.
That's the situation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that actually when you were saying that, I just thought of a quite good example. This is a real situation that is happening to see. That's why when I said parents' responsibility can be taken or assumed by different people who have that genuine caring commitment or who are willing to assume that commitment on any children development. So the example I can give you is actually, Dominic. Yeah. So the boy I'm talking about is a 15-year-old boy whose family is not immigrant. Like he's from the Eastern European part and have lived in Scottish border. But obviously the mother and father, they working at labor sort of work in a low-income family. And the boy was not really exposed too much of the learning opportunities owing to the financial constraint and also the limited exposure to the external activity. However, we have a dear friend who has taken on that opportunity to expose him to different things, from art to science. Anything that he was interested or he shows a sign of curiosity, he was given the opportunity to really see what's happening. And then with a few years' time, and it wasn't really a regular thing. It is just simply him coming up to Edinburgh for a weekend, going to different shows, maybe, a few times a year even. But then the communication between our dear friend and the boy was quite regular, including his parents. So his parents entrusted this part of enlightenment or the early enlightenment to the dear friend who has the means to support that. And as a result, the boy has become fairly mature compared to his peer of 16-year or 15-year-old friends. And we actually recently had a conversation that we were amazed at how developed his mindset was to look at the situation happening outside. And then when I naturally talked about what do you want to become after your high school, everything, because he's going for his National 5 exam now. And then he actually said, well, I would like to learn some crafts, doing a tradesman job before I decide whether university is my thing. So he actually has a very sensible arrangement of his own future. And then that was fairly practical. And then he also sees how good he actually was interested in becoming an electrician. He said, electrician seems to have quite wide applicable skills. He can go into computer if he wants to, or just the normal electric maintenance, everything. So at that age, he already had a fairly sensible approach. So this actually again shows when children at an early stage, they are exposed to the environment and also supported academically and psychologically by somebody who can sustain that. The parents' side is so the educating part of parents' responsibility is transferred to somebody else. So as long as a figure like that existing in a life, that is. It is, that is actually the situation. So, and also the other part is I probably would question the content of social support. UK has quite established social support system, particularly to support deprived family or children from deprived area. And the social support can be a good mechanism to really, rather than supporting them or pampering them, is to create opportunities for these children to learn and do something. And rather than just seeing them, they are just deprived, they should be given extra care. That to me is actually a form of discrimination, because they are not given the equal opportunity for these deprived family children to really fulfill their potential. So the social support worker, in my view, tend to be just how to make sure that you are not, treated by your parents. If anything goes wrong, how the society can help you by taking you out of their household or distance you from the parents, rather than trying to mediate that relationship and then trying to really talk to the parents how they can adjust themselves. So in other way, the support and attention has been much given to the children's side. Parents were ignored in a way. So this is why, I'm not saying we should have a parenting school, but certainly there should be some more established facility to support parents. So have an environment allow parents to really bond about things or share things, and then to feel that they have a community to back them up, rather than, just always the children. So that could be another thing, that the social support level can shift the focus of their support, not just to children alone, but also to the family.
I relate strongly to that idea of community. And in fact, the process of doing Dragon University, of learning from others, making real connections, and creating a playful space. I think a playful space versus a competitive space or a punitive space. Like I experienced education as a very punitive thing, very unpleasant experience. And it was only when I came out into the world and through relationships like you spoke about in context with Dominic, that other people sort of woke up interests in me and skills, and life became fun. I think that's really informed why I'm doing Ragged University and why I like learning in this way, and a vision of society like a platonic family, where we create a richer world. We enrich our world, our personal world, but through creating a richer world.
Laozi, the founder of Taoism in the ancient Chinese philosophy, actually had a very famous quote. So in translation, it means, only when we look after our own elders, we will learn to look after others' elders. And same as only when we look after and also care, pay attention, give responsibility to our own children, we will then extend that commitment to other children. So this is actually the transformation from the individual family level caring and nurturing to the nurturing to the collective level, the society level of so that is the form of compassionate, through the compassionate behaviors and actions that the benefits will reach to the whole society and the community. So the human development really starts at the individual level, because how can we look after others when we can't even look after ourselves or our own?
Something I really want to ask you also is, so you've spoken about being a parent. How much has Alex taught you?
She has certainly is a co-creator of this whole journey, because without her responding engagingly or actively, I couldn't possibly carry on. Because obviously she needs to give me something to work on. Just like when I want to feedback or, giving her my opinion about something or sharing my observation, she needs to give me that context. And then also through her communication and constant information sharing, I get to know more about what she's up to, what she's thinking about, what her mind is at, and then what is bothering her or what is intriguing her. So yes, it's the co-creator of this whole parenting journey. It's not a one-man show. It's very reciprocal. So yes, I would say she would. If we were looking at the proportion of this whole contribution, 50-50 will be the minimum, if not 70-30. Like she gives 70 and I do 30 as the result of reflecting and facilitating.
It's reminding me of I'm humbled to have got that opportunity to listen to a family talk together as old teachers and learners. Like to fill in the context for your Maurice. Recorded a conversation with the mom talking about what they had learned. How they saw learning in their family. I'm more and more interested in that learning between in personal relationships. So, any more? Or
Thank you very much.
thank you very much. I really do.